He said I embarrassed him too much to attend his wedding, so I stood up and destroyed every lie he built to hide his real mother. The yellow lamplight casts long shadows across my kitchen table as I carefully count out the bills from my savings book. Outside, Oregon's autumn chill seeps through the weathered window frames of my small suburban home. At 62, my fingers aren't as nimble as they once were, especially after scrubbing school hallways all day. But I keep counting methodical precise, just as I've cleaned those same hallways for the past 28 years. $120,432. I whisper to myself, still not quite believing the number. Nearly 3 decades of double shifts, weekends at the grocery store, and every odd job in between: house cleaning, car washing, elder care. All of it carefully saved dollar by dollar. All of it for Bryce. My son. Not by birth, but by a choice I've never once regretted. I glance at the pile of papers beside my accounting book. Bryce's education expenses from elementary through college, organized chronologically like a paper timeline of devotion. Funny how these receipts tell our story better than any photo album could. Each tuition payment, each book fee, each doctor's visit, all evidence of a love I never had to speak aloud. I still remember the day he came into my life. I was 32, working at Pinewood Orphanage as a cleaner, when they found him, a 3-year-old boy abandoned at the entrance wearing nothing but pajamas despite the morning chill. Around his neck hung a crude wooden bead necklace, and pinned to his shirt was a note with just one word: Bryce. No last name, no explanation. Just a child with frightened eyes who wouldn't speak for weeks. Miss Walker, would you stay with him while we process the paperwork? The administrator had asked. 1 hour turned to 1 day, then 1 week. By month's end, I was signing adoption papers. I gave him my last name, but kept Bryce as his first. It seemed the only thread connecting him to whatever came before. My son needs this. I say to the empty kitchen, running my fingers over the deed to the third-floor condo I purchased last year. It's registered in my name. I plan to transfer it to Bryce after his wedding as a surprise. A proper start for him and Tasha, his fiancée. She works in communications, comes from academic parents in Boston. I've never met them, though. Bryce always has an excuse. They're busy with academic conferences. Mom, it's not convenient right now. I've noticed how he changes around Tasha. More polished, less like the boy who once helped me fold laundry on Sunday evenings. I understand she's from a different world than ours. Her parents are professors. I clean school toilets. The math isn't complicated. I had dreams once too. When Bryce entered high school, I tried opening a small laundromat. That failed quickly. Not enough capital, too much competition. But we survived. I've always made sure we survived. I look at the clock, 11:30 p.m. I should be resting, especially with this nasty infection in my left leg. The doctor says it started from a small scratch that got contaminated while I was cleaning. Just my luck, 1 week before Bryce's wedding, and I'm hospitalized with cellulitis. The timing couldn't be worse. Bryce visited once with Tasha. She wore a mask and stayed near the door, claiming she was allergic to antiseptic smell. When I asked if they might postpone the wedding until I could attend, Bryce's response cut deeper than any infection. Just rest, Mom. You can record a congratulatory video. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about missing my only son's wedding, the son I've sacrificed marriage proposals for, the son for whom I declined every personal happiness to ensure he had opportunities I never did. Something felt wrong in that hospital room. Bryce's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. And Tasha, the way she looked at me like I was something unpleasant that needed to be scrubbed away. I drift off to sleep amid the mechanical hum of IV machines and the dim corridor lights. Midnight brings strange shadows and half-dreams until a familiar voice pierces my consciousness. Denise Walker. I open my eyes, not moving a muscle. In the hallway just outside my partially open door, Bryce is speaking with a man whose deep voice I don't recognize. She'll soon be facing an extremely difficult decision. The man continues. I strain to hear more, suddenly very awake with a chill that has nothing to do with hospital air conditioning. Something is happening, something involving me, and whatever it is, I don't think my son is on my side. I lay perfectly still, straining to hear every word from the hallway. The man with the deep voice speaking to Bryce. My son, my entire world for 30 years, was Dr. Noah Brooks, apparently an old college friend. The door to my room wasn't fully closed, and their voices carried with perfect clarity in the quiet midnight corridor. If we don't operate soon, the infection could spread deeper. Your mother might lose her leg. Noah warned, his voice carrying the practiced gravity of a medical professional delivering bad news. What came next shattered something inside me that I never knew could break. Just treat it adequately. No surgery. Bryce's voice was casual, detached, as if discussing a broken appliance. She's old now. She can live simply. My fingers clutched the edge of the hospital bed so tightly my knuckles turned white. She, he called me. She, not Mom, not even Denise. Just she, a nameless object being discussed by her owner. Besides, Bryce continued with a small laugh that cut through me like ice. My birth mother, Lorraine Carter, will be at the wedding. If my adoptive mother shows up in a wheelchair wearing her bargain store clothes, what will Tasha's parents think? I could hear Noah's shocked intake of breath. I thought Lorraine abandoned you. Not exactly. We've reconnected. She's living with a wealthy man now. Bryce's voice had an eager quality I'd never heard before. I'm reclaiming my true bloodline. The truth. The truth. What truth? I'd spent my entire adult life raising this boy, loving him unconditionally, sacrificing everything for his happiness. Was that not truth enough? My adoptive mother might cause trouble if she finds out, so just keep her weak for a few more weeks. Nothing serious, she won't die. Nah, keep me weak. I trembled under the thin hospital blanket, choking back sobs that threatened to expose my eavesdropping. The son I'd raised for 3 decades saw me as an obstacle to be managed, a problem to be solved, a secret to be hidden. After Bryce left, Noah entered my room to administer medication. He avoided my eyes as he injected something into my IV, then silently left a bottle of stronger antibiotics on my bedside table. His glance held pity. He knew I'd heard everything. My mind whirled through memories, birthday gifts wrapped in newspaper because I couldn't afford fancy paper dinner conversations where I pretended I'd already eaten, so Bryce could have the larger portion times I slipped extra money into his account without mentioning it. All those years of silent sacrifice now reduced to a balance sheet Bryce was waiting to inherit. Later that night, I feigned sleep when Bryce returned with Tasha. They stood just inside my door, thinking I couldn't hear them. She's definitely leaving her money to me. Bryce said, when I get it, I'll buy you that new car. Tasha's voice was impatient. I want the white SUV. Don't let your mother cause any more trouble. I don't want our big day ruined. She loves me blindly, Bryce replied with chilling confidence. Even if she loses her leg, she'll think it was just an accident. That was when something inside me, something that had been bending for years without my knowledge, finally snapped. With shaking hands, I waited until they were gone, then opened the bedside drawer, where I'd stored the bank card I'd planned to give Bryce as a wedding gift. The card that would give him access to my life savings, every penny I'd ever earned. Instead of envisioning his grateful face as I had for months, I slipped the card back into the drawer, my eyes cold and dry. For the first time in 30 years, a thought crossed my mind that felt both foreign and strangely liberating. I need to do something. Sleep never came after overhearing Bryce and Tasha's heartless conversation. I stared at the ceiling all night, the hospital's dim lights casting ghostly shadows, while my world crumbled silently around me. 30 years of love and sacrifice dissolving in the antiseptic air. The next morning, Bryce appeared with a cheap bouquet of carnations and a box of bland cookies items that had never been part of his gift-giving pattern before I'd taught him about thoughtful presents since he was small. A gift should show you notice what someone loves. I'd always said, these impersonal offerings screamed of obligation, not affection. "How's the leg today, Mom?" he asked, his eyes repeatedly darting to his phone screen. He was performing concern, not feeling it. His fingers tapped messages even as he pretended to listen to my reply about the pain. "It's manageable." I lied, watching him closely. "The doctor says I need more aggressive treatment. Whatever's best." He mumbled, already standing. "I need to pick up Tasha for her final dress fitting. I'll be back later." In his rush, Bryce left his phone on the side table. The moment the door closed behind him, I heard the vibration of an incoming message. Without hesitation, I picked it up. I knew his password. He'd asked me to review a presentation years ago and never changed it. 6/24/97, the day I officially adopted him. Some might call it an invasion of privacy. I call it maternal instinct, finally overriding maternal blindness. What I found confirmed my worst fears and revealed horrors I hadn't imagined. 8 months of messages between Bryce and Lorraine Carter, his birth mother who'd abandoned him on the orphanage doorstep. Photos of restaurant dinners, video call, screenshots, images of Lorraine wearing a diamond necklace. From my son. A voice recording from Lorraine. "Just secure your career and I'll appear as the ideal mother figure." Messages to Tasha that turned my blood to ice. "Don't worry, when my adoptive mother dies, the money transfers to me. I already figured out her bank password." A list of gifts from Lorraine to Bryce. Designer watches, luxury shoes, the latest tablet. Things I could never afford on my cleaner's salary. And worst of all, a message to an unnamed friend. "My adoptive mother is an idiot who spent her life cleaning up other people's messes. I'm about to level up." Level up, as if I were some character in a video game he'd outgrown. I didn't cry. Crying was for grief, and what I felt transcended grief. Instead, I texted Monica Reyes, my one true friend from the laundromat venture. "I need the best orthopedic surgeon. No more saving. I need to stand up." Monica's reply came immediately. "On it. What's happened?" Later. I texted back, "Just help me now." That afternoon, I began my counteroffensive. I started recording every conversation when Bryce visited Monica overnight, shipped a tiny recording device that I hid in my nightgown pocket. Simple technology that might have seemed paranoid just days before, but now felt like essential armor. During his next visit, Bryce brought a forged bank authorization form, casually suggesting, "Mom, you should transfer account management to me. It'll make handling hospital bills easier." I feigned confusion, mumbling that I'd think about it, then kept the form. Evidence. As I sat alone that evening, memories flooded back. 3-year-old Bryce running through rain because he'd forgotten his jacket. The first time he called me Mommy after months of silence, teaching him to tie his shoes on our worn kitchen floor. Those memories now played like a silent film, familiar, but disconnected from present reality. I'd always believed that fulfilling my duty as a mother was enough. Love him, educate him, set him free. But now I understood I was being used, until my final breath. I was never a mother to him, just a temporary resource. That night, I stared at my old cleaning kit beside the hospital bed. Among the familiar brushes and cloths lay something that shouldn't have been there, a rusty metal shard. My infected wound hadn't been an accident. The timeline suddenly made perfect sense. 1 week before the wedding, just enough time to ensure I couldn't attend, but not enough to kill me before he secured my assets. "It was you. Wasn't it, Bryce? I whispered to the empty room. Cold clarity washing over me like winter rain. 2 days before the wedding, Bryce appeared at my hospital room with a wheelchair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I've arranged for your discharge, Mom. You'll rest better at home," he announced already, packing my few belongings without waiting for my response. I knew what this meant. At home, isolated and immobile, I'd have no way to interfere with his wedding plans, no chance to expose the lies he'd built his new life upon, no opportunity to reclaim my dignity. "Actually," I said carefully, "the doctor recommended I practice using the wheelchair before going home. I'd like to stay one more day, get some fresh air in the hospital garden." Bryce's jaw tightened. "There's really no need for that." "I insist," I said, finding a firmness in my voice I'd forgotten existed. "Besides, I want to learn proper mobility techniques from the physical therapist." After several tense minutes, he reluctantly agreed, but added, "Don't bother coming to the rehearsal dinner. Mom, it'll be exhausting for you." The moment he left, I texted Monica. "It's time." Monica, who'd worked in event PR for 15 years before her current accounting job proved invaluable, she arranged for me to have a seat in the back of the wedding rehearsal venue as a staff guest. No questions asked. She also brought me a wide-brimmed hat, dark sunglasses, and clothes. I would never normally wear a perfect disguise for a woman whose own son wouldn't expect to see her there. "You sure about this?" Monica asked as she wheeled me into position at the back of the elegant hall. "More sure than I've been about anything in 30 years, I replied. From my secluded corner, I watched as the rehearsal began. And there she was, Lorraine Carter, the woman who'd abandoned her 3-year-old son on an orphanage doorstep with nothing but a wooden bead necklace. Now she stood in a designer dress and red-soled Louboutin heels, being introduced by Bryce as "my mother" to Tasha's academic parents and extended family. The admiration in their eyes was unmistakable. They saw a successful businesswoman, a worthy addition to their intellectual circle. Someone who wouldn't embarrass them at faculty dinners. Someone who wasn't me. Lorraine presented Tasha with an Italian silk scarf as a small pre-wedding gift. Tasha embraced her with tears in her eyes, tears of gratitude for a woman who hadn't spent a single midnight hour soothing Bryce's childhood fevers or helping with college applications. During a break, I wheeled closer to hear Tasha whisper to Bryce, "If your mom is this wealthy, why are we still living in that apartment your adoptive mother bought?" Bryce smiled confidently. "That's just temporary. After the wedding, Mom's transferring the River Park house to us." My heart seized. River Park was an upscale neighborhood I'd once dreamed of buying a house in for Bryce and his future wife. I'd even toured a property there, but couldn't come close to affording it on my cleaner's salary. Apparently, Lorraine had no such limitations. As the rehearsal ended, I quietly wheeled toward the exit, planning my retreat. That's when fate intervened. Turning a corner in a quiet hallway, I came face to face with Lorraine alone. Recognition flashed in her eyes instantly. Without a word, she grabbed my wheelchair and yanked it into an alcove. "What do you want?" she hissed. "I told you 12 years ago that I wasn't taking him back. Your stupidity isn't my problem. Keep me out of it." 12 years ago. So they had been in contact since Bryce was in high school. All those times he'd said he was studying late. "I'm not asking for anything," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "I just wanted to see your true face." Lorraine laughed, a cold sound like breaking glass. "Watch yourself. I can play the doting mother role forever if needed. You're just the cleaning lady in this story, a footnote no one will remember." Then, with a sudden viciousness, she shoved my wheelchair hard against the wall. My ankle slammed into the edge of a step, breaking open the barely healed wound. Blood immediately seeped through my sock. Lorraine didn't miss a beat. She threw herself backward onto the floor and screamed, "She pushed me!" Her designer shoe flew off dramatically as she wailed in pretend pain. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. Bryce and Tasha appeared along with several wedding guests. They saw exactly what Lorraine intended. An elegant woman sprawled on the floor and a sour-faced woman in a wheelchair nearby. "Mom, what did you do?" Bryce shouted, rushing to Lorraine's side. No one came to mine. "Your adoptive mother attacked me," Lorraine sobbed, leaning into Bryce's protective embrace. "I was just trying to introduce myself properly." Bryce turned to me, rage twisting his features. "This is why you can't come to the wedding. We'll hire someone to represent you. My real mother will stand in her rightful place." As a nurse bandaged my re-injured ankle in a quiet room afterward, I pressed play on the recording device in my pocket. Lorraine's voice filled the space, her final threat from the hallway playing back, with perfect clarity. "If you dare continue, I'll make you lose everything, including your other leg." The morning after the rehearsal disaster, I checked myself out of the hospital against medical advice. With Monica's help, I'd secured an appointment with a top orthopedic surgeon who agreed to see me on an emergency basis, a small miracle arranged through an old friend of hers. "Sign here, Ms. Walker," the discharge nurse said, concern evident in her eyes. "Are you sure about this? Your wound is still at risk of infection." "I've never been more sure of anything." I replied, my signature firm and deliberate on the liability waiver. Monica was waiting outside in her car along with a petite woman with a large makeup case. "This is Elaine." Monica explained, "She works in theatrical makeup. She's going to help you blend in." For the next 2 hours, I underwent a transformation. My usual plain practical appearance gave way to something entirely different, elegant but understated makeup. My gray hair styled in a sophisticated updo, and a tasteful navy blue dress that looked nothing like anything in my cleaner's wardrobe. When Elaine held up the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Perfect. Monica nodded approvingly. "Not even Bryce will notice you unless you want him to." I packed a small suitcase containing several crucial items: a portable speaker, a USB drive with recordings and evidence, and legal documents I'd had Monica prepare overnight. This would be my one chance. Everything had to be perfect. The wedding was held at Burlington Hall, an upscale restaurant in downtown. Over 200 guests filled the space, mostly Tasha's academic connections and business associates. I recognized no one, which made my disguise even more effective. I sat at a table in the far corner, observing everything. Bryce looked tense, but was smiling and greeting guests. And beside him stood Lorraine, playing the role of doting mother, flawlessly cream, silk dress, pearl necklace, gentle smile as she was introduced as Bryce's mother, again and again. Behind me, 2 women were chatting, unaware of who I was. "I heard the groom's birth mother is a successful venture capitalist," one whispered. "Yes, and apparently his adoptive mother is paralyzed and couldn't make it." The other replied, "So sad." I couldn't help but smile bitterly. Here I was, the supposedly paralyzed cleaning lady. They were pitying, sitting right beside them while they gossiped. The ceremony was brief and impersonal. No meaningful vows, just procedural recitations. Afterward, during the reception, the moment I'd been waiting for arrived: family speeches. Bryce stepped onto the small stage, champagne in hand. "I want to thank the most amazing mother who sacrificed everything for me." He began, his voice thick with fake emotion. "Mom, please come up and say a few words." And Lorraine rose, dabbing at non-existent tears, walking to the microphone with practiced grace. "I regret that I couldn't be with my son earlier in his life." She began, her voice trembling perfectly. "But today is the day we've truly found each other again." That was my cue. I pressed the button on my portable speaker, stood up, and walked. Yes. walked slowly toward the front of the room. Quite the performance, Lorraine Carter. My voice cut through the hushed reception hall. The room froze. Bryce's face drained of color as he recognized my voice despite my transformed appearance. Before anyone could react, I plugged my USB drive into the projection system. The screen that had been showing wedding photos suddenly displayed a different scene. Lorraine 12 years ago screaming into a phone, "I won't take him back. He's a burden. Stop trying to find me." Her voice echoed throughout the hall. Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Tasha stared at Bryce, confusion and betrayal darkening her features. Lorraine lunged toward the equipment, but before she could reach it, the doors burst open. Walter Granger, the wealthy man she'd been living with, stormed in with 2 security guards. "So this is where you disappeared to—" He growled, grabbing Lorraine by the arm and pulling her to the center of the room. "I've been supporting you because you told me you couldn't have children. Now I find out you've been hiding a son all along." With a sharp crack, his hand connected with her face. "She's my mother," Bryce shouted, rushing forward only to be shoved back by one of the guards. He stumbled, falling onto the steps leading to the stage. I approached my fallen son, slowly looking down at the man I'd raised from a frightened 3-year-old. "I once thought you were my pride and joy," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "But now I'm proud that I won't be seeing you through to the end. From today, I have nothing left to give you." I placed my suitcase on the table nearest to Bryce and turned to leave. "Mom, where's the money?" Bryce shouted after me, his true priorities exposed for all to hear. I paused, turning back with a smile that held 30 years of accumulated wisdom. "Open it and see." Bryce lunged for the suitcase, his fingers fumbling with the clasps in his desperation. The silence in the wedding hall was absolute. 200 guests, frozen in collective shock as the carefully constructed facade crumbled before their eyes. When he finally flung it open, his face contorted in horror. Inside lay stacks of counterfeit dollars crudely printed on a toy printer. The kind children use for play money, a cold, calculated mockery of his greed. In the center sat a small envelope with neat handwriting. "For you, son of appearances and lies. Where is it?" he screamed, rifling through the fake bills as if real money might materialize beneath them. "Where's the real money? The savings? The inheritance?" Tasha pushed through the stunned crowd, her wedding dress rustling angrily as she reached Bryce's side. Her eyes widened at the sight of the toy money. No wedding gift, no car, no house. Her voice rose with each question. "You lied to me." Bryce stammered, his confidence evaporating. She said she'd give it to me." I turned back one final time, raising the portable speaker to my lips. The room fell silent again. This party, this hall, this meal, I paid for all of it. My voice was steady, stronger than it had been in decades. "You all mock me for being a cleaning lady. Then let me teach you something. Dignity can't be purchased with a wedding invitation." The truth hit the room like a physical force. Every fancy centerpiece, every gourmet plate, every glass of champagne funded by the very woman Bryce and Lorraine had tried to erase from the narrative. Tasha's face crumpled. With a strangled sob, she gathered her dress and fled, pushing past her mortified parents who stood speechless near the cake table. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some discreetly making their way toward the exits. Others couldn't tear their eyes away from the unfolding drama, and at the center of it all was Bryce, collapsing to his knees among scattered fake bills, mumbling, "It can't be my real mother." I approached him one last time, close enough that he could see the face that had gazed upon him with love for 30 years, the face he'd betrayed. Real mother. My voice was quiet, now meant only for him. "She never raised you for a single day, who cleaned your messes, who wiped your nose when you were sick, who sat through every parent-teacher conference." Tears streamed down his face, but I felt nothing. The wellspring of maternal forgiveness that had defined my existence had finally run dry. I, I didn't mean, he began. Yes, you did. I cut him off. Every word, every plan, every lie. Monica waited for me at the exit car, keys in hand, as we drove away from the building that had once represented all my hopes for my son's future. The weight of 3 decades seemed to lift from my shoulders. He's completely destroyed now, Monica said, glancing at me. Do you regret it? I watched through the passenger window as the glittering downtown lights blurred past. I only regret not doing this sooner. For the next week, I existed in a strange limbo, expecting angry calls or desperate visits. Instead, silence. I changed my phone number, packed essentials, and finalized the sale of my apartment. Then, on the 7th day, a text message appeared on my old phone, which I kept only to monitor any potential threats. Mom, why did you leave the hospital without telling me you're still coming to the wedding, right? I stared at it, confused at first. Then understanding dawned. Bryce was in denial, or perhaps attempting to gaslight me into believing the wedding disaster had never happened. Pretending we could return to our previous life, where he manipulated and I complied. My lips curled into a smile as I set the phone down without replying. In my hand, I held an airplane ticket one way to a place Bryce would never think to look. The morning after my flight landed in Seattle, I met with a real estate agent to finalize the sale of the condo I'd purchased for Bryce and Tasha. Since Bryce had never been added to the deed, something I'd planned as a wedding surprise, he had no legal grounds to interfere. I signed the papers with steady hands, closing a chapter that had consumed nearly 3 decades of my life. The buyers are a lovely couple, the agent told me as we completed the transaction remotely. She's expecting their first child in 4 months. They're so grateful to find a place where they can build their family. I felt a lightness in my chest at this news. The home that had become a symbol of my manipulation would instead cradle a new family's beginnings. There was something hopeful in that transition, a sense that the universe had its own way of righting wrongs. With the proceeds from the sale and my remaining savings, I scheduled the leg surgery with the specialist Monica had found. It was expensive, the kind of money I'd once dreamed of putting toward Bryce's future, but for the first time I was investing in myself without guilt or reservation. Recovery will take about 4 weeks, the doctor explained after the successful procedure, but you'll be able to walk normally again without pain. Those 4 weeks became a metamorphosis. Each day of physical therapy pushed me closer to physical independence, but the emotional liberation was even more profound. I learned that I could exist, that I deserved to exist outside the identity of Bryce's mother. Once I could walk comfortably again, I made 2 decisions that would have been unthinkable just months before. First, I enrolled in an advanced painting class for seniors at the local art center. For 30 years, I'd cleaned other people's spaces. Now I would create beauty on my own terms. You have an excellent eye for light and shadow, my instructor commented during the 3rd session. Have you painted before? No, I answered truthfully. I've spent my life cleaning up. Now I'm learning to make marks that are meant to stay. My second decision was joining Monica as a volunteer at a nearby nursing home, helping elderly residents paint, play chess, and read books. There was something healing in being useful to others without being used by them, a distinction I was only beginning to understand. One afternoon, while teaching an art class at the community center, a small orphaned girl approached my table. Her pigtails were uneven, her shoes scuffed, but her eyes held the same wary hope I'd once seen in a 3-year-old boy abandoned at Pinewood Orphanage. "Miss, can I stay and paint with you?" she asked hesitantly. I knelt down to her level. "Of course you can. What would you like to paint?" "A forever home," she whispered, her fingers already reaching for the yellow paint. That night, unable to sleep, I drafted the initial paperwork for what would become the Denise Walker Standby Mother Foundation. Its mission was simple but powerful, supporting single mothers in poverty, women who had been abandoned and orphaned children. I would turn my wound into a door through which others might find healing. I moved to a small town in Washington state, renting a wooden cabin near a lake where the morning mist created watercolor scenes worthy of any gallery. Each day began with tending my small garden, then painting, and, finally, working on my memoir, The Life of a Forgotten Mother. Bryce's messages continued to arrive on my old phone, which I kept only to monitor potential threats. His texts evolved from angry, "How dare you humiliate me?" to pleading, "Please come back, I need you," to remorseful, "I made a terrible mistake," to threatening, "I'll find you eventually." I answered none of them. Then came a message that might once have broken my heart. "Tasha left me, Mom. I was wrong. You're all I have left." I looked at those words on the screen, remembering how just months ago they would have sent me rushing back to him, eager to comfort, forgive, and provide. Instead, I turned off the phone and walked out to my sunflower patch. The tall yellow flowers had grown from seeds I'd planted my first week in the cabin. They stood tall now, their faces turned toward the light with an honesty Bryce had never managed to achieve. I took a photo of the sunflower field with the lake shimmering in the background and sent it to Monica with a simple message. "For the first time in my life, I feel I have permission to be at peace." News traveled in whispers and fragments through Monica's network of contacts. I didn't seek information about Bryce, but it found me anyway, like rainwater finding cracks in pavement. The wedding that had exploded into scandal left more than emotional wreckage. Tasha filed for divorce just 21 days after saying, "I do," citing emotional and financial fraud in her petition. She left a voice message with Monica that eventually reached me. "I was wrong to trust him, but his mother didn't deserve to be treated that way." Lorraine's carefully constructed facade crumbled just as quickly. Walter Granger, the wealthy man who had bankrolled her luxury lifestyle, abandoned her upon discovering she'd hidden a grown son from him for decades, violating the fundamental trust of their relationship. According to Monica's sources, Lorraine was gradually selling her jewelry pieces to survive, living in short-term rentals and actively avoiding Bryce. Perhaps most devastating to Bryce's carefully constructed tower of lies, someone had uploaded a clip from the wedding confrontation to an internal company server. Within a week, he was called to a private meeting with the board of directors at his insurance firm. His employment was terminated for severe personal ethical violations. The company's conservative clients couldn't risk association with such public dishonesty. 6 months after I'd left Oregon behind, Monica called with an unexpected update. "Bryce showed up at your old apartment building last night," she said. "The new owners called security when he refused to leave." I imagined him standing in the hallway, confused and desperate, finally understanding that some doors close permanently. "There's something else," Monica continued. "When he was clearing out the storage unit you'd been paying for, he found your old expense notebook. He called me crying. That notebook, a simple ledger I'd kept since the day I brought Bryce home. Every expense meticulously recorded: school uniforms, vaccines, college application fees, birthday presents. 30 years of financial sacrifice, documented in my unsteady handwriting. Every page was headed with 'My son' in your handwriting." Monica said, "He told me it was the first time he truly understood that he wasn't abandoned. He was the one who abandoned you." I sat silently, absorbing this information like the wooden dock beneath me, absorbed the lake's gentle waves. "He wants to volunteer at the foundation," Monica added carefully. "I told him I'd ask you. As long as he doesn't cause trouble for anyone else," I replied. After a long pause, "I wouldn't punish others by denying help, even if that help came from Bryce." "He asked if you ever loved him," Monica said hesitantly. "What did you tell him?" "I said you loved him for 30 years. But now you're learning to love yourself. The Denise Walker Standby Mother Foundation grew faster than I'd imagined possible. Within 18 months, we'd provided emergency housing for 32 single mothers, college scholarships for 17 children from foster care, and ongoing support for over 100 families navigating the turbulent waters of poverty and abandonment. I never saw Bryce at the foundation offices, though Monica confirmed he volunteered weekly, working silently in the background. I'd set one condition: our paths would never cross. Some bridges once burned should remain ashes. On a crisp autumn morning, I stood nervously in the wings of an auditorium in Chicago, clutching note cards I wouldn't need. The foundation was receiving a National Humanitarian Award for outstanding contributions to vulnerable women and children. As I stepped onto the stage, blinking in the bright lights, a small figure darted up from the front row. A little girl in a blue dress, one of our first placement successes, carrying a painting of sunflowers. "Ms. Denise," she announced clearly into the microphone someone lowered for her. "I made this for you. It's us planting flowers together." I knelt to accept her gift, and for the first time in decades, tears flowed freely down my face. Not tears of loss or betrayal, but of joy, pure and uncomplicated. The following spring, I sat on my porch watching sunflowers sway in the gentle breeze. They stood shoulder height now, their faces turned toward the warmth, like worshippers before an altar. "Mom," a small voice called from the garden path. The little girl in the blue dress now. Officially, my foster daughter ran toward me, a book clutched to her chest. "Can we read fairy tales today?" I smiled, patting the wooden bench beside me. "Of course we can, but this time I'll tell you one of my own stories." She settled against me, her warmth more healing than any surgery could provide. "Once," I began, "I thought I was nothing but a shadow, a dark shape cast by someone else's light. But I discovered that the light doesn't come from elsewhere. It comes from within.